Okay, 1, 2, 3. Hi, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show with my host, Yolanda M. Smith, the philanthropist. We're once again celebrating Black Music Month, and I am privileged to have coming through those doors the legend, the general, the master, the artist. The list goes on. The promoter, the entertainer, the new innovator, the talent researcher. The list goes on. Welcome to the studio, my man, Sid, Uncle Jamz Johnson. Did I do it right?
Hello, everybody out there. Man, he gave me so many titles until I was saying,
But
can I live up to that one?
You've already lived up to them.
Well, I don't know about a couple of them that you gave me. I'm not so sure about that. They're still works in progress, you know. But, I'll own the good things and I'll disown the bad things.
We're going to talk about the ones that you own, the one you disown, the what, the who, what, why, and how. So tell the viewers a little bit about you, because I mean, this episode is a little bit different. I'm not going to control the narrative, and the reason for that is pretty simple. I don't know all there is to know about you. Your bio was like, did you get my bio, Andre? Yeah, I got the book. So instead of me talking about the bio, I want to make this episode more about you telling us the history of music, your role in music, and then I will ask the questions as you take control of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.
Okay. I was told, and I have no memories of this, but I was told by some family members that I used to like Elvis Presley. I don't recall liking Elvis Presley at all.
You need to find out who that was that told you that.
Yeah, I don't want to own that, but I do know that I enjoyed the Beatles in 1964 when they were on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I feel like that was my official introduction into saying I definitely want to do something in music, because it was really fascinating to hear those guys from England be on the Ed Sullivan Show and have all those girls screaming and going crazy. And I thought, wow, what is this?
Tell the viewers about the Ed Sullivan Show briefly, because this is a whole new generation. I remember the Ed Sullivan Show, but they don't know what it would be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you didn't get on the Ed Sullivan Show,
you wasn't nobody.
Then you were not anybody. Yeah. And everybody was on the Ed Sullivan Show. And sometimes the Ed Sullivan Show was overbooked.
It was kind of like a star search before Star Search.
I remember the late great, the Queen of Soul was booked on there, and they overbooked, and she got bumped, and she left out the studio crying. She was only like 18 years old when she got her major label record deal, and they put her on the show. And according to the story that Aretha told, she said they told her, could you change gowns? That first one is a little too low cut, showing too much cleavage. So she said, luckily she had another gown and changed. Then the next thing she heard on the voice coming over the intercom back in the dressing room, we're sorry, Miss Franklin, we've overbooked tonight, so we will not have you on the show. And she said she left out crying. Man. So that's how significant the Ed Sullivan Show was. Right. And she said many years later she got a correspondence in the mail talking about her check. And she thought, well, I didn't even appear on the show, but I sure will take the check.
Who's going to turn down some money?
Yeah, right, exactly. And I remember that show, and I remember watching that show all the time. I saw James Brown on there. I saw the Temptations on there. So for me, it wasn't...
You know what? It was the first time I saw the Jackson 5.
Okay. And it wasn't just about the impact that the Beatles had. It was the fact that being able to see that miscegenation of all those different genres of music, and that had a great impact on me. I grew up in a typical Black household in Indianapolis over by Crown Hill Cemetery on Boulevard Place. Okay. And in my household, there was Mahalia Jackson playing on the record player. For you young people who don't know what a record player is, that's what we had back in those days. Yeah, there was, like I said, Mahalia Jackson, there was Dinah Washington, there was Lou Rawls, there was B.B. King, there was Bobby Blue Bland, there was Cannonball Adderley, Shirley Scott, Wes Montgomery, all of these kind of things in gospel, blues, R&B, and jazz played in my household. I tested very high, and they came to my home to discuss with my family what high school I should go to, whether I should go to Brebeuf, College Preparatory High School, and now they had turned Shortridge High School into a college preparatory high school. It was actually walking distance for me. And I didn't like the concept of going to Brebeuf because they had to wear uniforms.
Right.
And I was hoping that my mom and everybody wouldn't make me go there.
What's your thing with uniforms?
I just thought that was, I didn't want to do the uniforms.
Okay.
So then they chose Shortridge. And I got accepted into Shortridge because I tested so high, and it was a college preparatory high school. They were a little bit afraid of me because, I'm not trying to toot my horn, but I tested as having a super genius IQ.
And you don't want to toot your horn?
Yeah.
You should be
honk,
tooting.
honk. So then the sad part for me was after being accepted into Shortridge High School, my mom decided she wanted to marry this man, she thought, and he got this relocation out in Seattle, Washington, and she said, we're moving to Seattle, Washington. So my freshman year of high school, I actually lived in Seattle, Washington.
Okay.
And in Seattle, I got exposed to a whole different kind of a culture. That's where I made a few friends out there, and we went to some of the rock concerts and different things out in Seattle. It was just totally different than living in Indianapolis. And one of the most essential things musically that happened to me in Seattle was, I have to go back to Indianapolis to tell the story of how it relates to Seattle. In 1964, my mom had gone to Chicago with her boyfriend, and we went to the Regal Theater. The Regal Theater was like a landmark of having great R&B shows back in the day. Okay. And they had the Temptations, the Vibrations, Junior Walker and the All-Stars, the Contours and the Marvelettes, and Aretha Franklin on this show. And Aretha Franklin stuck out in my mind because there was this lady with this low-cut gown on, and she sat down and played the piano, and I kept asking my mom, who is that lady? And my mom kept telling me, that's Reverend C.L. Franklin's daughter. And I'm like, who's Reverend C.L. Franklin, But all night long I was amazed by her. So that was the night she was crowned, as a matter of fact. I was in the audience the night when they crowned her. And so when we moved to Seattle, she was on Dick Clark's American Bandstand. And
God, I haven't heard that name in forever.
What, Dick Clark?
Yeah, the American Bandstand too.
Right. So I was in the room. I ran to her. I said, Mom, there's that lady we saw in Chicago 3 years ago, And she said, yeah. And this is when she did I Never Loved a Man in Respect. And then I was hooked. Aretha Franklin has always been my favorite vocalist and one of my top 2 favorite musical people. So I was just like, okay, this is it. So music, after having seen the Beatles, James Brown, the Temptations, the Jackson 5, all of that from 64 forward. Then I'm living in Seattle. I see Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wills, who had a song called Devil with the Blue Dress On.
Well, I like that song.
Yeah, I saw all that out in Seattle. Then here's Aretha Franklin, now the Queen of Soul. So I'm just totally addicted and baptized in music at this point. And so then when we moved back to Indianapolis, we only stayed out there for 1 year. Then I went to Shortridge, and I fell rightfully into my place of being in the college preparatory high school. And
did your IQ stand out?
Yeah. I was a member of the National Honor Society.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Toot your horn.
Hong Kong. So then, being that Shortridge was a college preparatory high school, there were a lot of Caucasian kids that went there because this was Indianapolis's great experiment.
Okay.
And I used to get permission from my mom to go to some of the doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs' mansions up on Meridian for their parties that they have.
Yeah.
And one particular night, I went to a party at the Streeter's house, Dr. Streeter, and he had an older sister that Tom Streeter, I think, was the guy that I was in class with. He had an older sister named Betsy Streeter. And I asked, could I use their restroom? And they told me it was upstairs. So I went upstairs and I used the restroom. As I was walking down the hall, I glanced over to my right, and it appeared to be a girl's bedroom, and it was Betsy's bedroom, but I didn't know it. And I saw this fabulous collection of albums sitting on the floor by a record player. So without any permission, I go into her bedroom, sit on the floor, cross my legs, and start thumbing through her record collection.
Yeah.
And then
your IQ did click in, not to go in there.
Right. So then I saw this album by Jeff Beck called Truth. And I remembered that I had loved the Yardbirds because Jeff Beck had been the guitar player in the Yard. I said, Jeff Beck has an album? I took the record out of the sleeve, put it on her record player, and started playing it. I guess I was gone from downstairs so long that they kind of missed me. And she came upstairs. She said, what are you doing in my bedroom? What are you doing with my Jeff Beck album? Why are you going through my albums? I said, I'm sorry, but this just caught my attention. So after I go home the next day, I asked my mom, could she please take me to G.C. Murphy? That's where I always get my albums from. Because they were like back then, $4.98. And I said, I've got to have this Jeff Beck album. She looked at me like, who is Jeff Beck? You know,
I was saying the same thing. I'm sitting there. Who is Jeff Beck?
My mom took me out to Glendale Shopping Center, where there was a G.C. Murphy, and I bought the Jeff Beck Truth album. So my two favorite music people have always been Aretha Franklin and Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck is noted for being one of the greatest guitar players. May he rest in peace. He just passed this January from bacterial meningitis. And it's like one of the greatest things in the world to admire somebody who is iconic and legendary. You get to meet them and you get to have a relationship with them, even though he's English and lived over in England. Being I'm a black guy, I stuck out every time he would come on tour in America, and I'd go see him, and he knew me, and we talked, and I became friends with his wife, and it's just one of those relationships.
You say he was one of the best guitar players?
Absolutely.
How does he rank with Jimi Hendrix?
Jimi Hendrix thought he was the best guitar player. When he moved over to England, he wanted to find Jeff Beck.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Jeff Beck constantly ranks in the top 10 on all guitar polls, and many people consider him the best. And there's always been a battle between Jimi Hendrix, and Eric Clapton as to who's the best. For me, Jeff is the best, was the best, is the best.
Your IQ proves it, so I'm not going to argue.
Same thing with Aretha, the best, always the best. There will never be another Queen of Soul. So that was like, you take everything that I went through in my childhood growing up in a typical black household, hearing Mahalia, Dinah Washington, Lou Rawls, B.B. King, Bobby Blue Bland, and all of that stuff. Then you combine it with being exposed to the Motown sound of the Temptations, the Four Tops, the Supremes, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, Martha and the Vandellas, Junior Walker and the All-Stars, the Vibrations, the Contours. Then you take that with the British invasion of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Yardbirds, Herman's Hermits, Manfred Mann, Eric Burden and the Animals, and all of that. Then you take the fact that I also was exposed to Shirley Scott, Cannonball Adderley, Yusef Lateef, Pharoah Sanders, all these jazz people. I'm a walking miscegenation of music.
What's the difference in the craft of music with the British invasion, or Motown, R&B, I guess that's what we called it back then, and jazz?
Well, the British people really study black music. They know more about all the black music artists than American blacks.
Really?
Yes, they when they come over here to America, they want to meet, like Jeff Beck wanted to meet Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy and B.B. King and all of those kind of people. That was an honor for them. Today's young black kids don't even know anything about the names that I just mentioned.
Right.
I mean, their heroes are Lil Wayne and Gunna. And,
Man, I like some Lil Wayne now.
You know, and I'm not throwing hate at any of the people that are their heroes. Every generation has the things that they like. But if people are listening to what I'm saying, I'm a miscegenation of it all. And I think that's what's missing with a lot of the young people today. They only focus in on one type and they don't have any variation. It's just the same as if you were to feed your kid Burger King every day. How horrible that would be. If you need a variety in your life, you have a right to like what you want to like, but at least be exposed to the other things, you know. So I've been exposed to it all. I've heard some really crappy music in every genre, and I've heard some really good music in every genre. So I'm at the point in my life now.
Hold that thought. How do you determine really crappy music and really good music?
Trust me, I know.
Your IQ validates it, right?
I know. It can be like, just because the streets like it doesn't mean that it's good. And you can have a hit, I mean, like, no shade on the man that sounds like a sheep out to slaughter. Keith Sweat. You know, I have to give Keith credit. He constantly stays on the road. He's the hardest working man in R&B right now. He just got off the tour with the New Edition, but he's out now doing dates all over the place. He's got that catalog of hits. And
what song do we not know by Keith Sweat?
Yeah, I mean, we might have hated it. We thought he sounded like a sheep. But
we was humming it.
They kept playing it over and over and over until I wanna give you my life. I mean, you just start, it's just there, you know, you can't do anything about it. So this is what happens with a lot of the young kids of today. Some of that stuff gets drilled in their head, and it's not whether it's really good or not, but it's okay if they like it.
Answer your question real quick.
It's okay, you know.
What made, you touched on something with the Keith Sweat, because believe me, I was rolling up and down 38th Street with How Deep Is Your Love and all the other ones, back and forth, wasting gas.
It's a right and a wrong way to love somebody. Yeah. You know.
What you said you heard it over and over again. What's the difference between what he did versus what you're trying to educate the young up and coming artists today?
There's this thing called being an outlier or an anomaly. Like we have today, Lizzo, she's an outlier. Lil Nas X, an outlier. Blueface, an outlier. There are people that come along every once in a while and you just kind of wonder, what on earth made them really click? Right. So when you look at all of the R&B singers during the same era of time that Keith Sweat hit, there were certainly people that as singers could sing a lot better. But and the same could apply to Mary J. Blige, because when she first started hitting, she had a big problem with pitch, and some of her producers were taking samples, mixing it in with live music, and there would be 3 different keys. She's singing in one, the samples in one, and the live musicians are playing in another. But the stuff felt good to people. It resonated, like the black women that had gone through abuse and troubled relationships, and that heartache and pain, they could relate to Mary. And so the songs that Keith Sweat had, like I Give You All My Love, Right and Wrong Way to Love Somebody, I Wanted, those things, you know, they resonated with people. And see, what we have nowadays, we don't have a lot of songs that resonate with people. This stuff seems like it's just like factory driven, like it's automation, you know, it's too much. There's no heart and soul.
What do you think made Mariah Carey so extraordinary in the brief time that she was? No disrespect to her, but I really didn't, and I'm not a vocalist, so I don't know, but the high-pitched screaming, I thought that was cool, but I really wasn't resonating to any of her music.
Mariah is, and I can't throw any shade at Mariah because that I have a piece of her big hit, We Belong Together, and I thank you. I was able to buy a lot of furniture and stuff off of that. Love you, Mimi. But I could say that she sort of was an anomaly as well. When she came,
what was her clique?
When she came along, the first thing, people couldn't tell whether she was black or white. That was confusing to people. And she had these tunes that were very well crafted and hit that commercial spot on people. And they played her like crazy. Whether you really liked it or not, you heard it all the time. And then when she would do the whistle notes, that's what you call that she does, that would be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, you know, when she whistle noted, it was over. She can't dance a lick. You know, it's like, you're just totally floored by the whistle note and then the crafting of the material. There are musicians and people that can really sing, like Layla Hathaway can really sing, but she's never had a hit. You know
why?
Why?
And you're I mean, I know it's a hard.
Probably it's because she's goes over the head of the regular commercial listener.
Okay.
If you listen to commercial radio, many of the songs are in the same beats per minute that play behind each other, and there's a similarity between them. When you put Layla Hathaway in there with that mix of songs, it sticks out like a sore thumb. It doesn't sound the same. She's a little too good for commercial radio.
Tell me, since we just mentioned some of these artists and the legends, who are some of the legends that you've learned from, that you worked with, and what lessons did you get from working with these individuals?
I've worn so many hats in this music game. Like when I was in high school, I was a journalist and wrote for the school paper, and I did a music art entertainment column in high school. And I would go to concerts and interview a lot of the rock stars of that day. Like I interviewed the Grassroots and Paul Revere and the Raiders and people like that were really hitting in the late 60s. Then when I went off to college, I did the same thing. And I would go interview the rock stars like Johnny Winter, Edgar Winter, Rick Derringer, the Ides of March, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I also interviewed B.B. King, Millie Jackson, Eddie Harris. I've been up close and personal. I have a list yay long.
Yeah, I saw that list.
Of all the people that I've dealt with. So I've learned a little bit from all of them. I mean, I've gotten some incredible stories from some of the people, of some of their struggles and what they've gone through. Then I've become really good friends with some people that were not legends when I started being their friend, but they have turned into being legends.
Give me an example of the ones that you're talking about.
Babyface.
Tell me the journey there real quick.
I met him when he was a teenager. I was doing some dealings with his older brother, Melvin Edmonds, may he rest in peace, who was also became a member of the group After Seven. And I had to take some material out to their home on the northwest side of Indianapolis for Melvin to learn some songs in this band that we were doing a couple of special shows. And that's when he sort of introduced me to his younger brother, Kenny, at that time. Little could I have thought 3 years later I'd be his manager in a group called Manchild. It's just like, I remember that little boy. And the week that Kenny graduated from high school was the week that he joined Manchild. And I had to go out and meet with his mom, and she said some very choice words to me about I better look after her son because we were going out of town and stuff like that. And I'll never forget that conversation. I knew that it was something very special about him early on. I could see that he had the gift, he could write, and it was really inside of him. I remember in 1980, we were at his mom's home looking at Saturday Night Live, and Aretha Franklin was on Saturday Night Live performing, and he said, I want to write something for her one day. And who could have thought that some 12, 13 years later, he would be writing and producing for her. Wow. You know, if somebody could look at that as speak it into existence. Mm-hmm. You know, many of the people that he dreamed of meeting, he ended up meeting them, and not only meeting them, but he got to write and produce them. So that's watching somebody that you've known from being a kid turn into one of the most iconic and famous songwriters of all time. Who else is legendary? There's the leader of Manchild, Reggie Griffin. He's legendary. Most of that music on Sugar Hill Records, the Sugar Hill Gang, Haji, and all that stuff. He played the instruments on all that stuff. He played all the instruments on Shaka Khan's version of I Feel For You. He even wrote the rap that Melly Mel did. There's Midnight Star. Yeah, I mean,
your list goes on, but out of that list, what is the one that not Babyface? That's out of the other ones outside of Babyface. Which one stands out the most that had to deal with, like, that you saw really struggle, but you used your talents to help them? Because let's get real, it's not easy in this game.
Well, I could curse Reggie Griffin and thank him, because I was a fledgling rock and roll singer, and we used to be managed by a rip-off con artist manager way back in the day. And I went to see the Average White Band at the Indiana Convention Center in 1975 in September. And lo and behold, the opening act was this group called Manchild. And I remember looking up there and said, oh, there's that boy Reggie Griffin that I know a little bit, and we were managed by the same guy. So I went up and spoke to them after the show was over, and Reggie kind of asked me what was I doing now. And I said, well, I had just formed a new rock funk band with a cousin of mine out of Danville, Illinois. But after seeing you guys, I'm throwing in the towel. We can't hang with you. Y'all bad. He said, well, here, take my number. Do me a favor and call me tomorrow. There's something that I want to talk to you about. So I kind of went home and thought, what in the world does he want to talk to me about?
Right.
So when I called him, he said, I got this idea about, you joining the band and playing Briefcase. And I thought, what is that? So they were getting ready to play at this place called Gordy's Lounge up at 38th and Sherman Drive. They were doing a residency there for a week.
Okay.
So I went up to Gordy's Lounge to see them, and this was like not from them being the opening act on the Average White Band show. This was a night where they do 3 sets, and I got to see them in full force. They were just really bad. So they told me to hang back after the night was over, and we got the cleanup crew and everybody putting up stuff. I'm the only person sitting in there besides the band who's gone downstairs, and I'm like, what is going on here? Then they came up and they all surrounded me. I thought they were getting ready to jump me. They said, we just went downstairs and voted, you're our manager now. And I was like, I didn't audition for being a manager, but that's what he meant by playing Briefcase.
Did you have any experience at that time other than?
Well, he knew of my abilities because I had booked another band that he was in called the Soul Continentals at my college on a show, and he knew about my journalism, and he was like, extolled, talking about, you're